Thank you for tuning in to Breaking Down the Barriers on KZI 88.7 FM. I'm your host, Beverly Reeves. Breaking Down the Barriers is an initiative of the Austin Independent School District. This program was created to provide information on resources, programs, and district initiatives to support our families in preparing each and every student to be successful. Today's guest is Dr. David Kauffman, Interim Executive Director of the Department of English Language Learners. He is here today to introduce us to the district's dual language program. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So Dr. Kauffman, please tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your role as the Interim Director of the Department of English Language Learners.
Okay. So I began this summer in this role, serving our 23,000 English language learners and our additional dual language students that we have in the district. But prior to that, I was principal of Lance Corporal Nicholas S. Pettis Elementary School for the last 10 years. And as principal of that school, about half of our students were English language learners. Okay. And so we really had a strong and vibrant dual language program to serve those students. I've been in the district for, this is my 13th year here in the district.
Okay, that's good. So we're here to talk about dual language. So explain to us really what the dual language program really is.
So dual language is one type of bilingual program that's offered for students. And a dual language program is unique in that it teaches students in two different languages. It teaches them, in most cases in our district, is English and Spanish. We also have an English and Vietnamese program. Okay. But for example, in the English-Spanish dual language program, the students would be learning both languages, but they would also be learning in both languages. So for example, in our programs in the past, we've taught math in English, but we've taught science and social studies in Spanish. Oh, and then the students are learning reading and writing in both languages. And so it's different from a traditional bilingual program where the students would be, where the goal is simply for them to learn English and gradually transition from one language into English only. The difference with a dual language program is that the goal is for the students to remain fluent in both languages and to learn both simultaneously.
And the students in these dual language classes each have native languages that are different. So you have native English speakers and native Vietnamese or Spanish speakers
so
in the class together.
Right, there are two types of dual language programs that we offer. One is a one-way dual language, and the one-way refers to the fact that the students in that class are speaking one language and they're learning the other language. So for example, a one-way dual language class typically would include only students whose native language is Spanish. Okay. And they would be learning in Spanish, but they would also be learning English. In a two-way program, that refers to students who are coming from two different language backgrounds. So in a two-way class, you'd have typically an even balance between students who are native English speakers and students who are native Spanish speakers, and they would be learning together both languages.
Okay. It sounds like there's a lot more to the program than just languages. It's richer. It sounds like there's culture and other things involved. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So there are three main goals that we have for the dual language program, and that one is for our students to become bilingual, the other is to become biliterate, and the third is to become bicultural. And by bilingual, we're referring to just the ability to speak and understand two languages. By being biliterate is talking about the actual capacity to read, write, speak, and listen in two languages with academic content. So really being able to be fluent in the language in a way that they can operate at a high level. And then to be bicultural refers to the sensitivity and understanding of different cultures. And so when students interact with students who come from a different cultural background from them, they develop the empathy, they develop the capacity of understanding, they develop an understanding of their own cultures from their cultural tradition, but also the cultural traditions of other cultures. And so it really creates a much greater sense of community and understanding.
That's good to know. At what grade levels are these programs offered?
So in AISD, we begin as early as pre-K.
Wow. Okay.
Typically, the students would enter the program in pre-kindergarten or kindergarten, in some cases in first grade. And the programs continue at this point all the way through elementary school. We've started last year implementing dual language programs in middle school. And so we currently have programs at eight middle schools where we have students in 6th and 7th grade in dual language. And we're exploring the possibilities of expanding to high school in 2 years when our first group of students reaches that age.
About how many students do we serve in this program?
So so when we're looking at our dual language programs, I have this written down here just so I can make sure. We have Currently, we have in our one-way programs, we have almost 10,000 students.
Okay.
So those would be our students who come to school speaking Spanish at home or another second language, and they're entering the one-way program. But in our two-way programs, where we serve both the native English speakers and the native other language, we have about 1,600 non-English speakers and about 1,600 native English speakers in those programs. So it's quite a number of students that we're currently serving in these programs.
And so you talked about offering Spanish and Vietnamese right now. So are these programs offered throughout the district or only in certain schools?
And so we have a presence in most schools in most areas around the district. So we currently have our dual language programs offered in 58 of our elementary schools and 8 of our middle schools. And then when we're thinking about the two-way programs, those are currently offered at 19 schools in a variety of geographic areas in the city.
Okay. And if parents are wanting to look into the possibility of enrolling their child in dual language programs, would they have to live in that attendance zone, or do they transfer? What does that process look like?
It varies based on the school. Certain schools are already at capacity and don't have room for additional students to come in. Other schools do have an open transfer policy. And so really that would be an individualized question based on the campus that they're interested in. But that information is all on the AISD website, and parents are able to go online and see which programs are offered at which school, which programs offer the Spanish dual language, which programs offer Vietnamese dual language, and then to look into whether transfers are possible at that school.
About how long has the district been offering dual language?
So it began with a pilot group of schools 7 years ago, and that initially was about 12 or 13 schools implemented the program in kindergarten and first grade that first year. And then the next year it was expanded to include almost every school in the district. And so we've been doing it district-wide for 6 years now. And it expanded, and as I mentioned, it started with kindergarten and first grade, and now it's expanded 1 grade level per year.
Okay.
So that's why we have kids as high up as 7th grade now.
And talk to us a little bit about the benefits of participating in a program like dual language.
So the most important thing to know is it is an academic program. It's intended to teach the students the academic content that they get in school. And so it's not just about language. It's about what's the best way to teach students in a way that they can be successful in math and social studies and science and reading and writing. And so for our English language learners, the evidence is extremely strong that students who participate in such a program learn English quickly, and they're also learning content at a very successful level. So the academic focus is really important, because we don't want parents or people to think I'm sacrificing academic performance so that my student can learn another language. So I just want to emphasize that academic gains are really significant and important. The obvious benefit is that students become bilingual, which is a very valuable asset in our global economy. It provides job opportunities for students that they may not otherwise have. It provides an opportunity for students to connect to other countries and other families and other cultures. And for for our students who come in speaking a different language, the power of maintaining that language over time is that they can maintain the connections with their family. I know I've heard stories, and learned from families where the student can't communicate with their grandparent because they didn't continue learning their own family's native language. So the bilingualism is obviously the most visible benefit. But there's a lot of research in the last 15 or 20 years with the advent of more brain research and a lot of different innovative ways to look at how kids learn that has identified several other cognitive benefits, brain-based benefits to being bilingual. They're learning that students who are bilingual tend to have a greater focus on attention because they've learned how to identify whether they should be speaking Spanish right now or should I be speaking English right now. They learn greater empathy because they learn to read the cues in someone else's face to understand, is this someone who I'm going to speak Vietnamese with, or is this someone I'm going to speak English with? And so they become more empathetic than other students sometimes. They also, over time, the gains in reading can be quite significantly more powerful because students are learning how to, they're learning more about the language than just learning to read it, because they start to see the differences between the two languages. And by seeing those differences between the languages, it helps them understand each language more than they would otherwise. And then obviously the cultural implications are huge, because when students are separated and they're learning in groups that are just homogenous with people like them, there's just a lot less capacity for them to develop the empathy, the understanding, the capacity to get along with students who are different. And so the cultural pieces are very beneficial as well.
Well, a lot of the things that you listened really tied into our social and emotional learning piece, the empathy and the cultural awareness and inclusiveness piece.
Yes.
So that's a good connection there that I'm happy to hear about. I want to talk a little bit later about the brain research, the improvements in attention and reading and those types of things. But it sounds like with the bilingualism that the students acquire, when they get to high school, it seems like they would just breeze through the foreign languages that they're required to take. And so we don't have any students that are old enough to get into high school yet, but in middle school, you can start taking your foreign languages, pre-AP, those types of things. So I would assume that this is going to benefit students in that way also.
Yes, and we're excited as we're looking forward to what the program could look like in high school. We've been visiting other districts and learning about how other districts have implemented high school dual language. But one thing that we've definitely seen with our middle school program is that Spanish 1 is no longer an option for the students, because they've already exceeded beyond that. And so to get that first high school credit of Spanish 1 is not a challenge for our students, because they already have the basis. The challenge for us is to make sure that we're offering a program for them that gets them the credit for Spanish 1, but also challenges them at the level that they're at. So we offer Spanish for Spanish speakers at the middle school level to distinguish it from Spanish 1.
And so are we looking at expanding it to the Vietnamese also eventually, and maybe even adding another language as we grow the program? Right.
So right now our focus is on really doing well what we've begun, but we're looking at all the different options for the future, including expanding our Vietnamese to the middle and high school level, including incorporating other languages. We do have a large number of students in our district now who speak Arabic, a large number of students who speak Burmese. And as we continue to explore our options, we want to think about whether those programs are possible for our students as well.
Okay, great. So Dr. Kauffman, I read an article a couple of days ago about the implementation of a dual language program in Washington, D.C. In a predominantly African-American school that happened to be low performing. And the discussion around or prior to the implementation was whether or not it was good for the students. You know, one side of the argument said that, you know, it was great, it gave them the advantage, they can learn a second language. And the other side, the opponent said, no, the students are struggling with reading and math and everything else, don't put anything else out there. But I understand, in just listening to you speak a little bit about the research in our first segment, that it shows nationally that students can improve in their reading and in their attention spans. And so it sounds to me like it's possibly a good thing if they implement it appropriately.
Yes, Beverly, and there's been a lot of great research on dual language over the years. Much of that initial research focused on the benefits for English language learners, the students who come in speaking mostly Spanish or mostly a different language, and they learn English. And that research is really solid. It's been proven over and over again that students who are participating in a one or two-way dual language program over time exceed the results in English of students who are immersed in English only. And that's a common misconception about bilingual education in general. A lot of times parents will think that the fastest way, the best way for their student to learn English is to put them in English only.
Right.
But we've really found that when a well-implemented dual language program where students are maintaining their native language and developing it academically while also learning English, that they actually end up performing better in English and they're bilingual. So that research is really solid over time for what we do for our English language learners. But recently, there's been more research focused on how are the students who are non-English language learners doing in the program, the students who are native English speakers who are coming into the program. And so two of the leaders on this are Thomas and Collier. They've done a lot of research over time on dual language, and they had a large-scale study in North Carolina where they looked at how are the two-way students doing in the program. And what they found was in all academic areas, including in English, that the students in those programs are doing better than the students not in the program. And they looked separately at each group. So they looked and they said, well, how are the white students doing who are in the dual language program? And they were outperforming the students not in the program. How are the African American students doing who are in the program? And they were outperforming the other students not in the program. They looked at low social economic status. So the students who were living in poverty or coming in without some of the economic benefits of other students, they were doing better in the program. They looked at students with disabilities who were being served in special education. And those who were in dual language were doing better than those who weren't. So really, dual language is a program for all students, whether you're at a school that is at a low-income neighborhood, whether you're at a school that has a predominantly African-American or Latino population, that the program has really shown benefits for all students.
And I will say, referring back to that article I was speaking of, that the program is actually successful so far. So they're seeing improvements in test scores. And so that was encouraging to me, because I really want the audience to really consider dual language programs for their students, because it's something that we're seeing more and more today when you apply for jobs or when you apply for colleges, that whether or not you have a second language is really critical. And that second language can be Spanish or Vietnamese or Arabic. It can be any language, but just the process of going through a dual language program can open up areas of opportunity that sometimes a lot of us don't take advantage of. And I would really like to see more of our students take advantage of that program.
Yes, and our superintendent made clear earlier this year that our district is meant to provide equity and an opportunity for all students. And he very clearly said all means all. And so when we're looking at our dual language program, we feel the same way. It really needs to be something that's available regardless of what the background of the student is. And you really raise an interesting point about that debate about the school in Washington, D.C., because there is a long-standing debate over what's the best approach for students who may be coming into school behind academically. And there's been a real shift in our thinking in this country from a deficit-based thinking, where we look at students and what's wrong with them and try to fix what's wrong with them, and looking much more towards a strength-based approach, because we know that all students come in with strengths. They all come in with experience of some sort. They all come in with background that they can apply to their learning. And it really is the job of the schools to adjust to what the students bring, rather than identifying the student as being somehow flawed or need to be fixed. And so that leads to a real important distinction between how do we address the needs of students when they come in and they may not be equipped with what they need to be successful in school at that moment. And one line of thinking would be to say that you need to slow it down, and you need to bring it down a level because they're not ready. But if you bring it down a level, the students are never going to get caught up. They're always going to be behind. And so really the powerful thinking is around accelerating learning for students. So if a student comes in maybe lacking some of the vocabulary or some of the oral language experience that other students bring to school, instead of slowing it down for them, we need to speed it up for them, because they have to catch up. And so dual language is often identified as an enrichment program, because it's really meant to be understood that we're not going to slow down for a student and deny them the opportunity to become bilingual with all the benefits that accrue from that, just because they enter school with maybe fewer vocabulary words than some other students. Dual language is meant to enrich the education for them, and so it is meant to provide an opportunity for them to get the same experiences that other students would be able to get. So when we're thinking about equity or providing opportunity for our students, I really feel that dual language plays a central part in that, and we need to do the best that we can to implement effective programs that are going to meet the needs of those students.
I agree. And you mentioned Dr. Cruz, and all means all. And so dual language is for all of our students. So that means that we should really ensure that all of our families are aware of the program. And I think I remember you mentioning something about, in a previous conversation, about focusing on a couple of schools in District 1, maybe having dual language over there?
Yes, and then we found that there's a strong advocacy for making sure that the program is available in all neighborhoods in our district. And So we've been working with various community members, including Roscoe Overton, who's been a real strong advocate for bilingual education and dual language for students. He has his own programs and his own organization that works on this issue. We've been partnering with them, with his group, to provide some pre-K programs at a couple of our schools in East Austin. He's also, we also include him and other members in our committees that look at the expansion of dual language and how we're offering the program. And so we really are trying to partner with different organizations and look at schools in all areas to try to make sure that we're providing the opportunity and that we're also communicating about the possible benefits. Because just like I said, with some parents thinking that the best way for their student to learn English is to put them in English only, there are families who may not know the benefits of being bilingual for their student, or may not think that that's appropriate because my student doesn't speak Spanish, I don't speak Spanish, my student doesn't need to speak Spanish or Vietnamese. And so just helping families understand the choices that are available to them and the possible benefits. And then if a family feels like it's the right thing for their student, then they can explore the options for where it's offered in the district, and then we can work together to do our best to make sure that they're able to get the student there. At this time, what I would want to emphasize is that we don't have the program in every single school. And the reason for that is because we want to implement it with quality. We want to do a good job implementing it, because a poorly implemented program isn't going to benefit anybody. And so we have it offered at the schools that are best positioned right now to implement it based on the population of students they have, based on the various components of the program they have available there. And so, again, I would counsel families to go to the website for AISD to see which schools do offer it that are in their neighborhood or in their area, or that they would be able to transport their student to. And then to visit that school and find out if it's the right thing for their student.
Well, this has been some great information about dual language programs in Austin ISD. We're about out of time. Do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I really appreciate this opportunity. I'm very excited about the dual language that we offer. I'm excited about the students that we serve in our district. I'm excited about the teachers who work their tails off every day to provide this opportunity for students. And I'm really appreciative of the parent support that we have for our programs. We have many parents who serve on our committees, a lot of parents who come and are brain thought partners with us to think about where the program can expand and how. So the support for the program has been great, and we really just appreciate the partnership among our staff, our students and families, and the community.
Well, that's great. And again, thank you for being with us, Dr. Kauffman.
It's my pleasure.
From the Department of English Language Learners. And thank you for joining us on Breaking Down the Barriers. To keep up with information in the district and the AISD community, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at AISD_BDB. Also watch Breaking Down the Barriers on AISD's Channel 22 every Tuesday and Thursday evening at 7:30 p.m. and Sunday mornings at 10:30 a.m. I'm your host, Beverly Reeves, and I look forward to talking to you next time on Breaking Down the Barriers.